The Omid and Kojo Show.
There he is.
Hey.
Man of the hour. Oh, I thought you were just drinking.
As well.
It's that type of talk. How you doing, Brendan?
Oh. With me. Apologize.
You know? Oh, hello.
Amazing.
Hello, mate. How are you, Brendan? Are you well?
I'm surviving the pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not too great over America, is it?
No, it is a mess. It's an absolute mess in the States.
But what we have to battle that is our flips.
We do have our flips. They can't take our flips, eh?
Well, it's really nice that a lot of trickers are really good athletes. Don't mess with the cord. It's nice that a lot of trickers are really good athletes because it makes them a lot less susceptible to a lot of disease.
Yeah. True. Yeah. It also means that even when everything closes down, then we can still like really enjoy ourselves.
Yeah.
Like I found that even without everything, just having tricking, it makes you really appreciate how much joy you can get just from that.
Mm.
For sure, for sure. And one thing that's nice about tricking is you don't need that much space. You don't need that much stuff. If you have a good field of grass, you're good to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The winter is rough, though. The winter is rough.
Yeah, I bet. I escaped the winter. I ran away to Portugal.
Yeah, like in Portugal this year. And what's the coronavirus situation like there?
They don't have that much. They don't have as much as the UK. It's like people wear masks a lot, but everything's still open. Like the gym's still open, which is pretty great. So yeah, it's not too bad here at the moment. You just got to wear masks. But apart from that, then it's kind of fine.
As long as you got a mask on your neck.
Yeah, you got to wear a mask on your neck at
As
the
long
gym.
as it's on your neck, it's fine. Can't get you. It's fine.
Yeah, it's a strange one. But yeah, Brendan, I wanted to ask you, because I'm always, I don't know, I'm always up for blabbering on about this. And as a man running your own tricking teaching brand, I know you'll like to blabber on about this. So I was wondering, what's your kind of vision with mastering tricking? Because I see you're getting into the streaming now as well. And I was wondering, overall, where do you see it all going?
So that is a really good question. And the end goal is to build a really good tricking gym. That's the end. Way down the line. There's ways to expedite that process right now. I could open a gym right now, but I don't think it would be something that I would want to run and do.
It's a lot of work, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it's not that it's a lot of work. It's that tricking needs more foundation. I need to get more of a plan and more of a structure around what am I going to be teaching? What's the important things? What's the space going to look like? Is it going to be more about health and longevity or pushing, grinding, and making mad gains? All of those things I still need to figure out as a person. And in the meantime, what I like doing is doing what I can for the community. So making videos, doing tutorials, and just putting content out there. The live streams are nice because I get to talk to people in person.
Yeah.
That was something I was really missing during the pandemic and not traveling. And that's pretty much the grand vision, is to build a really epic gym. But in the meantime, like figuring out a progressive structure to outline tricking. So a sort of ranking system or a sort of progressive path that says, this is what I recommend you learn as a beginner. This is your starting ground. And here's where I recommend you progress. And here's where you can turn left and turn right and go down one path or another. I want to be able to write all that in a cohesive vision. And that's going to take time. All right, I'm going to open this and get these cats out of here. Yeah.
We haven't got Technicat difficulties. So I did that. Bloody.
No, but I think what you're already doing does lead into that really well. Just with your ability to like build and kind of nurture a community, because that can transfer over to like a real world community at that gym, like of people you're seeing all the time. So
Yeah, that's the long plan. The short plan is make it through the pandemic and don't go broke.
Yeah, yeah. Everyone's plan.
Everyone's short-term plan, just survive.
Yeah. Protect your lungs and don't go broke.
Yeah.
Oh.
So what's in the immediate future? Like, how have you? Because obviously, I don't know. I don't want to be talking about the pandemic constantly, but it has effects on the way that you navigate through creating a tricking business. And thankfully, you've been doing a lot of things online regardless. But then it's obviously going to change how you move forward. So what have you done to tackle the COVID situation, and what are you going to be doing moving forward?
So the big thing I've done is I've switched my model to make all of my content as public as possible and as accessible as possible.
Okay.
So before I had a Patreon, and there I would release exclusive content and people would donate money in a subscription-like service, similar to something like Kojo's Trick Lab or Adrenaline. And I really liked that, but that content didn't really get viewed. It didn't really get used. And I want my stuff to get used, and I want it to get viewed. Distribution has always been more important to me than monetary gain. So Twitch, while it's not the best monetary gain, it's a great way for me to just talk to people and get an actual intimate connection. And I think that really helps during a pandemic. But just besides pandemic stuff, it's trying to make more of a structure for tricking. And for me, it's about pushing health and longevity. That seems to be something the community lacks a little bit.
For sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, because we've all made, I mean, me and you both, I think all of us have made mistakes with that in the earlier days of tricking, just from not knowing, just because the information wasn't really there.
Yeah.
I think one thing, if you've got like general knowledge of, you know, how and anyone who does any kind of sports at any level will train, like, you know, that they want to be doing it for as long as possible. But then if that information isn't being relayed to you with practical advice, especially from somebody that's like in your realm, then it's a lot more difficult for you to really wrap your head around it. Because none of us thought we were invincible, but we also didn't know where the limits were and how to train.
We trained like we were invincible.
Yeah.
Even though,
we knew we weren't, but it was like, blind sight. I
Yeah.
guess.
The older I get, the more I think and the more I realize that there is a dichotomy between performance and longevity.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at like a Western training mentality, it's very structured behind performance. There's a lot of routine, there's a lot of tracking. If you look at more of an Eastern training mentality that you'll find in a lot of martial arts, it's more of a, this is my lifestyle. This is what I'm going to commit to, and I will naturally progress up through the stages. One, I think, is really good for performance. One is better for longevity. And I think more tricking athletes need to become aware and ask themselves the question, do I want to peak at 25? Or do I want to peak at 40?
Yeah.
And it's a real question because...
So do you think... Sorry, you lagged out a little bit there. Do you think there's like, the ideal is to find somewhere in the middle of the two? Or do you think if you focus on more long-term gains, then it will have the more immediate effects as well?
So I think it's a really nuanced and complicated question. I think everybody's going to fall somewhere in the middle, or you're a monk on a mountain, or you're, I don't even know. There's nobody pushing so hard in performance that their body is just falling apart. And like trickers did that a lot when they were younger. I know I certainly did. And as I get older, I steer more towards a longevity approach. But I do acknowledge that if I'm going to peak in 3 months, performance-wise, then there's also going to be a dip afterwards. Every peak comes with a lull and steady progression.
Well, with the actual longevity itself, because there's a few different ways to approach that from. And one of them that, since like breaking my ankle, recovering and being able to trick again after that, like, I feel like the kind of conditioning and flexibility stuff, everyone knows, everyone feels like they should do more. And yeah, there's doing more of that. But another side to it that isn't talked about as much is how much you understand every movement you're doing. Because I found even before I broke my ankle, there was tricks I could do, and I had like a really low level of understanding over it, and that made them more dangerous. And to get back into higher level tricks, now I've learned them, but I know exactly what I should be doing at every point, and I can do all the progressions on the way. So there's no like skipping steps out and full sending stuff. And I think that's like, yeah, just something that doesn't come up that much when people talk about longevity.
Yeah, well, I think there's a physical progression and a mental progression. When I tore my ACL, I became the biggest nerd in the world. I would just read scientific papers instead of watching anime. I got too deep. And I think that getting that level of knowledge is really important. And you can progress mentally even if you're physically weak. Like, if you tear your ankle and you watch every gamer tutorial.
Oh, he's breaking.
Oh, am I breaking up?
Oh, it's back. It's back.
Yeah, you said if you injure your ankle and then you were breaking up.
No, sorry. We're getting there. But so you can progress mentally in not just a physical way. If you injure a body part, your body is going to be naturally weak. But you can still work your head. Do visual meditation. Watch every tutorial you can. And just invest time into the mental side as your body develops. Because it doesn't take that long to stretch and condition. And while you stretch and condition, you can let your mind go wherever it wants. You can be doing gainer switches in your head while you do push-ups.
Good approach to have, yeah. I mean, that's something that I think, do you think there's kind of a best practice for people to, because this is something I genuinely don't know the answer to. Like, for the younger generation, I know if somebody were to give me advice, unless it was the most explicit advice, like a step-by-step guide, I wouldn't get it quite to the extent that I do now because I've lived it. And do you think there's a good approach or a best approach that you found to really
get into
people's heads? Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think there's a best anything. I think everything is very, very individualistic. People find their own. Like for me, I very much learned in the fire. It was like I was cliff diving when I was like 11 and 12. That's kind of crazy. Like I was doing triple full at like 14. That's a lot. I don't expect that for everybody. And I understand that my journey is very different from the journey of most other people. So I don't try and find a best anything. I just try to throw balls at the wall, and whatever works for someone works. Like for me, a weird example is visual meditation. I really like visual meditation. I meditate every day. I will literally sit on a bench and think about how to do a cork. What body positions am I going through? Where am I spotting? What is my pinky doing? I don't know. I talked to other athletes and they hate that practice. They find it's ridiculous. They would rather journal on it. I've known other trickers that like to draw themselves going through the tricks. And that's how they best understand it. Okay. Like the different methods of learning in like school, I think that goes to tricking as well. I'm a very visual learner. I think if I can see someone doing a trick in person, I will have a much better understanding of how that trick works. Where I know other guys are tutorial fiends and they love it. And they can work through it intellectually. And everybody has that different learning style. Like, it's hard when people ask for the best or the greatest or the ultimate, because I think it's so cool.
Well, I think Omid meant more like the best way to get people to understand why they should look after their body.
Oh,
It's hard to get that point across to people because when they've not lived the big injuries, it's hard to get to people why they should be caring for their body.
Well, also because you don't have the foresight to envision how you're going to feel when you've been doing this for 10 years.
Yeah,
because
you wouldn't know.
I mean, you've hit a decade now. I'm fast approaching a decade. And when I was fucking 17 years old, I couldn't imagine what I was going to feel like in a month's time. Never mind how bad things would be if I didn't take all the preventative measures that I needed to like condition and stretch in order for me to feel okay and continue progressing at this age and after this amount of time. It's like I caught on soon enough so that it didn't fuck me up forever, and then I was like, okay, well now I've slipped a disc in my back and I can't trick. But it would have been a lot better if I'd have realized these things sooner. And even though people would give me like a surface level kind of
Be careful.
process, yeah, like don't you got to look after your body, make sure you've got a good base, like that doesn't mean anything to a dickhead 17-year-old who doesn't know anything about progression, you know.
so I think that is such a beautiful question, and I had to learn that lesson by fire. Like I have a giant scar on my wrist. You see right there? It's like 2 or 3 inches long.
Yeah.
And I have a pin in it. Because when we're guessing about 11 or 12, I fell off a swing set. I was doing a cartwheel on top of a swing set.
Damn, sending it.
Well, on top of the fucking, on the bar.
Yeah, on the bar. Like a beat. I was treating it like a beat.
I love it. I love that you're doing that.
And
Big grin on his face.
And I broke my wrist. And I went inside and I hid it from everyone. I didn't want I had got doing a cartwheel on the swing set. Wrist starts feeling better. Months go by and I start competing in Taekwondo. And I start getting better and better and my wrist starts to bother me. So I go to my mom and I said, hey mom, my wrist kind of hurts. What should I do? Should I see a doctor? No, ice bucket. Stick it in an ice bucket for 15 minutes. That's what I did. For 2 years, I ice bucketed my wrist.
2 years, didn't move. You just walked around with this ice bucket on your arm.
Literally, it was a daily practice ice bucketing my wrist because I was in competitive Taekwondo at the time and I just get kicked all the time. And then I finally convinced my mom to go to a doctor, and it turns out I'd been training on a broken wrist for 3 years.
Damn, that's crazy.
Surgery to get it all fixed up. And I didn't learn my lesson at all. 2 years later, I burnt my face off trying to breathe fire. Years after that, I tore my ACL doing a cork to split in a show where I shouldn't have done a cork to split. I could have just done a backflip. And to this day, I still don't know when I'm pushing my body too far. My body has to tell me because I will push it into the ground. And it's hard to learn that lesson. It really comes with experience and pushing your body too far. Because if you don't ever push your body at all, you will not get injured ever. If you push your body, there is a risk of injury.
Yeah.
If you live an extreme lifestyle, that comes with that. Tricking is an extreme sport. I tell someone when they learn tricking, no, we're good. I did too. No, I was so worried. I thought you had gotten back.
Cat difficulties.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's just chatting to the cat.
Oh, I almost just messed up royally, but we're good. I'm so sorry about that.
That's okay.
It's all right.
But no, it's a hard lesson to learn. I had to learn it by getting it beaten into me, and I still don't know when I'm overtraining. And like at the beginning of this pandemic, I struggled to push people to train really hard. I know we're trying to stop talking about the pandemic, but because the symptoms of overtraining are pretty similar to the symptoms of COVID. Upper respiratory issues, coughing, fatigue. That's enough of an overlap for me to say, take a step back, guys. Let's stop overtraining for a little bit, even though we love progressing and I love making them gains like a fiend.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a hard one. It's still one of the hardest things.
It's all about, I don't know. I feel like as long as you're tricking, you'll always be trying to find that balance. But if you're going in the right direction, getting better and better at balancing it and knowing how much to do and how much not to do. Like, I feel like a big part of tricking progression, it's not even getting better at the tricking itself, but getting better at training tricking. Yeah. Like that's a lot of the satisfaction comes from that. Like how good can you be at training this effectively rather than how good are you actually at the tricks?
That is good wisdom. That is such good wisdom. I think that the better you get at knowing how you learn and how you train, the better you will just be as an athlete. I think that's really good wisdom, my guy.
Well, from the mentality, well, like visualization thing we were talking about before as well, because I've been thinking about this one recently. A really good example for explaining that is like, think about doing stuff on your bad side, because your body's strong enough to do a double cork, you know, because it's done it loads of times. And you know the technique of a double cork. You can explain it in detail and you can do it. Well, why can't you do it on that other side? And that makes you really realize how important awareness actually is. Like I think with a lot of tricks people can't do, it's not even because your technique's not that good. It's normally just not having awareness. I think that's kind of, the awareness kind of comes first. Like when you did your first cork, you probably didn't really know anything about cork, but you figured out how it felt.
Well, this goes back to me having a screwed up training that was not normal. I could double full before I could ever cork.
I could do that as well. I got card dub before cork as well.
Yeah, I had card dub before.
Well, I mean, like double full down the tumble track.
Oh wow, that's really far.
And for me, I treated it like a swing full, and then I had to work backwards from there. Whereas some people have to work with nothing and work up. And like, when I started teaching tricking, it was a real for me trying to learn how other people learned because of how I learned differently.
Yeah, I found that really difficult. Like I remember in the early days when I first kind of changed my touchdown raise technique, because I used to have more of like a round the side kind of touchdown raise. When I first changed it and I was getting better at it, I was like, okay, I feel like I get this now. Kojo wanted to learn touchdown raise, and it was like speaking a different language to him. I just didn't have a fucking clue how to break the trick down for him. And I tried so many times, but every single time it was genuinely like I was explaining it to fucking, I don't know, Indian or something.
Yeah, it just made it worse for me.
Yeah, like I just couldn't.
But that was because the things I didn't know wasn't what you were explaining. Because I think sometimes everyone naturally does some stuff right and some stuff wrong. And it's like the stuff you naturally do right, you kind of don't even bother explaining it sometimes when you first start out teaching. You just explain the stuff you struggled with. Omid would just tell me about kicking my leg backwards, but didn't tell me really what to do with my arms. And that was what I didn't really get, what to do with my arms.
But the arms were the easiest thing for me to do. It was just like a natural thing. Without even thinking about it when I was first trying it, I was like, okay, so if I just swing my arms like this, then it happens. And so because it was never like a fully conscious thought, it just kind of happened. That wasn't on my radar to be telling him, but that was the key for him.
Yeah.
It's a hard one.
Yeah, it's just everybody learns so differently. And I find that I try and teach for so when you watch a tutorial, you're consuming someone's experience. And their experience may work for you, it might not work for you. When you read a book on tricking, it's the same thing. When you go through a Facebook thread and everybody's giving different tips, it's the same thing. And I think getting as much experience as you can is the best option and the best thing for you. And the more experience you can personally get, the more you can also share with others. And then we can all get better together, which is like the dream.
Yeah. Yeah, true. Though sometimes as well, and because I think everyone's probably done this at some point too, like with giving advice. Because I know in the past, I've given advice that looking back, I would have been like, oh, that was actually pretty bad. And I think sometimes in the tricking group as well, like some of them, I think it's okay to have different perspectives, but then sometimes there's things that are actively like the opposite of what you'd want to do.
Yeah, it's going to be counterproductive.
Those are the ones to watch out for.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, we've both been on the...
We've both done that. We've both done that.
We've both given bad advice, and also received bad advice, and seen the negative effects of it.
Yeah.
Because my first advice from people about cork, it just confused me. I was like, it doesn't make any sense. So I was just doing it wrong for ages. And then I had to kind of go on this, I don't know, I had to fully understand it myself, not from somebody else telling me. Because, to be honest, the information back then wasn't quite what it is now. The common things that people would say wouldn't.
Well, we also misjudge some of that because we've gone through, me and Omid, both of us gone through different phases with like teaching cork and gainer, for example. Mm-hmm. Now, I used to think that if you taught gainer, like swinging around the side, not flipping at all, I was like, oh, well, that person's, you're gonna not be able to flip your gainer properly. Because I saw people get taught it that way and they couldn't invert it. Whereas now, I've come like full circle. I'm like, that's actually a great way to teach it, but you need to make sure you teach them how to invert it properly. Because sometimes you like miss a crucial step. I think it works as long as you have that crucial step that explains how to transition it properly.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest problems with tricking as a whole, like for me, I would miss out entire tricks, like half rotations, for example. I wouldn't do Arabians because I was like, I'd rather just do full, or I'd rather just not do it at all because it's kind of awkward for me. Whereas if I'd learned Arabian, it would have made everything so much easier. All the type of shit that I want to do now, it would just be like so much easier. But I didn't realize that at the time. I was just stupid and just didn't do it.
Yeah. Well, like on the topic of people giving bad advice, I think the best advice I have on that is to stay in your own lane if you're giving advice. And when you read advice, treat it with a large dose of skepticism and work it in your head and see if it actually makes sense. That guy saying, swing your arms down, you do a backflip. Sense. Well, you want to get some backwards flipping momentum. If I go like this, I go forward. If I go like this, I go backwards. Think it through. Don't just assume that because there's someone on the internet who has a few followers that they're right.
Yeah.
And if you're like in my position and YouTube's position where you're putting stuff out there, forgive yourself when you screw up and try and do the best you can. I've screwed up many, many times. And if I look at a tutorial that I released 3 years ago, it's just a different feeling. Well, and at the time, I have to leave those tutorials up because those tutorials help certain people. And I cannot judge the value of a tutorial if someone's learning from it, you know?
Yeah, but I think it's a really good thing in lots of ways. I think you should be able to look at a tutorial that you made like 2-3 years ago, and you should watch it and think, I know so much more now. I could teach this so much better. Yeah. Like that's a kind of pretty cool feeling that like you progress that much.
Well, you can watch my cork tutorials progress because I've made like so many over the years. You can watch the first ones kind of crappy, and then you can see them get better with time. Production value rise as well, which is a funny thing that goes along with it.
I mean, yes, it's great. It's such a fulfilling kind of progression that you get because it means you can really add more value to somebody's like training. And it could save somebody like weeks of time, months of time even, if you can teach things in an efficient way.
I mean, that was the whole motivation for me to like start even teaching tutorials. Because I just wished that I had, like when I started out, I just wished there was a load more information. Because I was some people can figure it out, but I was just so stupid. Like I was just doing everything completely wrong and not understanding anything. And I know I had like power, and I was prepared to train every day. Like I was training multiple times a day. If I'd had that direction, I feel like I could have got so much better. So that's like my main motivation.
Yeah, well, like there's the phrase hindsight's 2020. If I look at my whole life, I could make all the right decisions or the wrong decisions, but we're here. We're stuck with it. This is what we got.
But the next gen,
the hamstring is gone now. This is my new leg.
damn.
It's just raw acceptance. Because I carry many injuries. I have the pin in my wrist. I'm missing hamstring in my leg. When I was young, I got a hairline fracture in my hip. Screw the injuries. I got a decent body. I'm happy with it.
Would you say you're better than ever?
So we talked about earlier, physical progression and mental progression. I'm better than I have ever been mentally. I don't think you take steps backwards in mental progression unless you get concussed, and that happens, but let's avoid that if we can. But physically, I don't know. I do not rep out gainer switches every session to see how many gainer switches I can do that session.
Yeah.
That's the only way I'd be able to keep track of it. I don't lift my max every week to keep track of my max. So it's hard for me to know. And I don't have a ring or an arena to test my skills. It's not like I can battle. And of course I can make a sick sampler where I just throw down hard as heck in a gym alone. But that's not I can see myself progressing, but it's hard to tell if it's just me understanding more or my body getting stronger.
Yeah. So do you place a lot of importance, I guess, how much do you think you can tell you've progressed based off of battling? Because to me, that's never really been a signifier as to my level. It's more like, how many times have I practiced a combo in order for me to win this battle?
So I think there's just different arenas. I think the best way to judge someone's ability is a single set sampler. That is the best way, in my opinion, to understand how good a tricker is, what is their endurance, what is their consistency. Film every trick for one session, then make the dopest sampler you can. Now, of course, editing goes into that, which is not part of how good of a tricker they are. But still, I think that's the best you're going to get. I think battling is a whole separate arena. Battling goes back to that Western mentality where you're going to peak for it. If I know I'm battling at adrenaline, I'm going to be training timed combos. I'm going to be doing bursts. And if I'm training for hooked, I'm going to be training long passes that extend my combos and have a lot of diversity. Without that arena, I don't train for either one. I just train to get better.
Yeah. I mean, both of us now, I mean, I see myself as retired from battles. I mean, like my thinking with that is because it just kind of dawned on me one day. Because there was a time, like when I did a couple of the adrenaline events, I thought, yeah, I might try and train and get better at battling. But I did think, like, I don't really enjoy it. And the big one for me was I looked back at my past injuries, and about half of my major injuries, or the ones that took like a month, 2 months or more, half of my injuries happened during battles. And then I thought, what's the overall amount of my tricks that I've done in battles? And it probably makes up like one out of every 5,000 or 10,000 combos, one is in a battle. And that's half of my injuries. And I was like, that is such a huge risk, like for the reward, which is not much really, because I don't enjoy it that much anyway. So I kind of, from just me not wanting to be injured, that's why I kind of stopped battling. I know other people could not get injured, but for me, just being in the battle makes me force things. In a normal session, I take off wrong, I'll just come out. I'll just do like 2 twists instead of 3, or I'll do like a safety break fall. In the battle, I try and force it because I'm in that zone of I need to land it, and that's when I get hurt.
Yeah. Well, like, I think that goes to battle mentality. When I battle, I will perform at 60%, and I don't let myself go above that. If I do a trick from standing, I'm not going to throw it in a battle. If I cannot do it consistently, I'm not going to do it in a battle. And in that, I always battle weaker than I really am. But this goes back to what is a true competition in which we're going to be able to judge trickers. The raw battles that Adrenaline is doing now is not a true competition in my eyes. Not because it's not 2 trickers showing their skills head to head, but because those 2 trickers are on 2 different floors. And you guys know just as well as me how important a spring floor is and how much it can change the ability to perform your highest level tricks or your lowest level. We don't know how much gym time those guys are preparing. We don't know how much time they had in that gym to understand the space. We don't know how much room they have on the floor compared to their competitor. All of these variables make it a bad competition, but a great show.
But wouldn't that mean that would have the same kind of effects on what we would consider normal battles, though? Because all of those things are preemptive to the actual battle. It's just that the final product is on the same floor. So besides that, everybody else does have different situations. Like certain people have way more gym time. Certain people have way better facilities. They have better recovery options available to them. And it just kind of, I don't know, it feels like you kind of get the same result minus the same floor. And that does make a difference on the day, especially if one person's training on one wrong floor and then the other person's got to do their passes on like the best floor in the world. But I feel like that's always going to kind of be the case with any competition.
I get what you didn't think about that actually. Well, yeah, but that's just the overall inequality of life, which is going to be a thing in any competition, and you just got to make it as even as you can.
But I just think that it comes with a little bit of a stigma, and I think that's why you've come to that kind of conclusion, Brendan. And I get it, but for me, I just see it as slightly different because I think you could look at somebody and think, well, they've got way better situation for them to train, so this inequality is a bad thing. And I guess it is because you do want to level the playing field, but you also can't stunt other people in order for everybody to be on the same playing field. But the ideal would be to lift everybody up so that everybody has equal opportunity. But it's really fucking difficult. You can't just do that. Just get the best gym ever for everyone.
Yeah, it is a super good question and a super important thing to consider how some athletes have more opportunity than others. I decided a long time ago that with the content I made with Mastering Tricking, I was going to make it for the weak. For those who were struggling, those who understand it less, because I could also make every tutorial about dubs, because I know a lot about dubs. But I decided to make it for the weak instead. And I think that if the athletes who have more in life, those of us who were born with all 4 limbs, because that is something I'm grateful for every day, because there are many people out there who are just born with no arm.
Yeah.
You got to accept that you have that is great, that you should be grateful for, and try and push that to those who may not have access to those things. Like a diabetic tricker is going to struggle a little bit more than a tricker without diabetes. Can they not be a badass? Hell no. There was a really important moment for me at Hooked 2017 when a kid with one arm came up to me and said, "Sign my arm." That's some powerful shit.
Yeah.
I think about that every day. And
Yeah.
There's different levels of privilege. And having health and wellness is a huge amount of privilege. And that we need to use that to help those who have less. At least that's view.
A lot of people in our lives, we've been asked quite a few times about how good people can get. They're like, oh, can I get good if I'm like 6'5", or can I get good if I'm 32? And yeah, my kind of view on that is like, not everyone can be the best. Not everyone can be in the top 1%, but I think everyone can be good. And like, if you're able-bodied, everyone can get better at least. Everyone can get to a level that's like decent. I mean, unless you go to the people, unless it's like you don't have legs, but most people can get decent. And I think that's just a good mentality to have for it. Like, not everyone can be the best, because some people ask if they can. People focus a bit too much on being the best. I know I did when I started. Was that ever going to happen? I started when I was 16. I'm 6 feet tall and heavy set. Like, was I ever going to be as good as a 5-foot person who started when they're 6? Like, it's not realistic, but I could still get good. And I think, yeah, I try and tell people that a lot.
So you have to play with the cards you're dealt. And you don't know how good you could or could not get until you try. We just don't know. So it is a shame to just put out that fire out of ignorance.
Yeah.
At least figure it out if you want to go down that path. I try not to push people into an athletic tricking path if it is not part of their lifestyle and they do not wish it to be part of their lifestyle. And I try and tell people who want to get good at tricking to the point where they can do a dub-dub, that you're going to need to be fit, like a super athlete. You're going to need to be flexible, but not too flexible, like a contortionist. You're going to need to be strong, but not too strong, like Jujimufu, or you'll get joint damage.
Yeah.
All of these things are really important to consider, and it is a deep commitment. So I think everybody just has to be really aware with themselves. And it's hard for me to push everything because I'm very ethically minded as a coach. When I was younger, I was teaching a parkour class, and a girl rolled her ankle. The amount of guilt that I felt for that poor girl who hurt her ankle was so high that I became way more cautious of a teacher. And these days, I get messages sent to me like, I tore my ACL last week doing a cork. That breaks my heart, man. Be nice to your body. We all got to be nice to you. We only get one.
Yeah, of course. I mean, going off what you were saying about people's kind of people's approaches to doing the sport as a whole, one thing that's always kind of, it's not just with tricking, it's kind of with anything in life. I've always hated and never really understood the mentality that if you think something's going to be hard, you don't even really give it a chance. Just because you're like, okay, well, it's going to be hard, so I'm not going to do it. But you could have been incredible at it. Like, before even trying the thing, you've already made your mind up that you're not going to be able to do it. So you fucked the whole idea off. And then before you know it, you've possibly squandered one of the greatest things that could have happened to you purely because you had the wrong mindset just from the jump. And I've always thought it's so crazy because you can't live your life like that. Like, if something appeals to you in theory, I think you should give it a go, regardless of what it is. And not necessarily within tricking, but like whether you're going to start tricking, because it could be the greatest thing that ever happens to you. Because if I've had a different mindset where I looked at these insane flips that I was watching on the internet and was like, well, I can't fucking do that, then it would never have made me who I am and like got me to this point.
Yeah. I think it's all really important. Just thinking about what got you here and how you can use that to help others. Yeah.
No, the internet's a great tool for that. Because I've thought about that sometimes. Like, I wish when I was a kid, someone had told me that I could get good at stuff. So I didn't really know. Like, I had a garden trampoline and I could do a front flip and a back flip on it, but I didn't know there was even more moves I could learn. Or if someone just told me you could get really good at this, practice really hard, why don't you try and get to triple back flip? Then I would have, I just didn't, I feel like that's all some kids need. Like, to know that it's possible for them to be good at stuff.
Yeah.
Well, like it's a life lesson. If I try hard at something, I will get better at it and I will become a better person. That life lesson is important for everybody to learn. And it's a life lesson that carries through all parts of life, including if you live in the US, doing your taxes. That is not a fun thing to do.
Oh,
But
tell me about it.
for me, it was really hard for me to know that I could learn things. I grew up in the special education system. I have ADHD and dyslexia. Reading is a really hard thing for me. That's why I don't respond to that many comments. It just takes me like a long time to read. If it was all through voice, it would be like a dream for me. So it was, I know I could learn and get good at things until I did martial arts. Until I started at that white belt and I earned that black belt, did I know I can get better, I can learn. And a lot of people learn that through gymnastics or they learn it through baseball. That is a common theme that people take from athleticism that they carry into the rest of their life. I think the thing that people take away from tricking is confidence. Feeling good about your body, thinking you can learn something, you can do something. I'm a badass, I can backflip. Yo, I can dub, that's sick. That level of self-gratification is really hard to get in other places in life besides athleticism. But if you get that from athleticism, doing your taxes is easier. Reading books, I became a reader after I did Taekwondo because I sat down and was like, screw dyslexia. If it's going to take me 8 hours to read this book, I'm in 8 hours. Bye-bye, day.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing, probably the best thing you can get from tricking. Like just learning that if you put in enough, then you can do things that seem impossible. Like for me as well with work, and I've never had anyone help me with running a business or anything, but I believed that I could at least like try and do it because I knew, well, no one helped me to learn tricking and I managed to learn that. So yeah, I think it just enables you to do anything that you want to. Whereas if you've never like overcome something that was hard, then it's hard to start.
Yeah, once you get that ability, once you learn how to learn things, it really opens your eyes and your mind to being able to do anything that you want to do in life. And that's one of the greatest things that's ever happened to me.
That's why you ran your marathon.
Yeah, I ran a marathon the other day.
He's a proper runner
I
now.
ran a bloody marathon.
Can you imagine telling yourself 3 years ago, all right, Omid, you're going to run a marathon and you're going to feel good about it. And you're going to be able to walk around relatively
I was trying
well.
to flip 3 days later. I couldn't believe it. I was like, what the fuck is going on here? I don't know. It just made me realize, you're right about the confidence thing. And like, I just realized that if I can overcome all these challenges that I've put in front of myself over the past decade, whether it be through starting YouTube, tricking, clothing, any of these things, if I have put these barriers up in front of me, because I could have just not done any of it and just chilled. I could have just done way less difficult things and I wouldn't have been anywhere near as fulfilled, but it would have been a lot easier. But instead, whenever I've forced myself to overcome a challenge that I've set, I know that I can do it because I will die before I stop. That's just the way it is. I can't not.
Yeah.
Tricking gave that to me though, because before I was just like, I don't know what the fuck I'm capable of. And now I'm like, well, I've always been a bit deluded, but now I'm delusional to the point where I'm like, okay, some point in my life I'll probably run 100 miles and it'll be mental, but I'll do it.
You're going to run for president.
An ultra marathoner. No, I do think that if you learn that you can do things and learn things, that will just carry through everything. Like you'll you'll look at a YouTube video and actually do the video and cook the.
Oh, I wish I was doing that with the food. Fucking hell. Food is one of the hardest things in my life. I don't know what to eat. I just eat chickens. I just eat chickens all the time.
Yeah. No, we talked a lot about what would be best for people and what I recommend for people. And I try really deeply to be very little with my recommendations because I personally live so intensely. Like every day I take a hot cold shower. So I make the shower nice and hot, nice and toasty. It's good. My body feels great. Then I instantly jack it to cold, start hyperventilating to oxygenate my breath or my blood. And then I hold there for a minute, breathe out, and then I reoxygenate my blood again. Then I breathe out, and then I turn it back to warm, and I get all mellow. And then I do this 2 times again. And I don't do that every day, but it's something I do. And if you do that and you have heart problems, you could die. You can have a heart attack if you go hot, cold, and you hyperventilate. And I don't want to, I'm careful with that kind of thing.
You don't want to be telling some overweight dude,
like, go do this.
Yeah, go do this.
Yeah.
Well, I do the same thing. I just have a normal warm shower, and then at the end, I do a minimum of a minute of as cold as possible. And yeah, it's great. Also, ice baths. Ice baths are fucking great. It's such a great mental challenge, and you also come out, well, you feel like a wooden man immediately after getting out of a nice ice bath. But after that, you feel fantastic. It's great.
Yeah. I often kids that there's like different levels of athleticism. Level 1 is like pick stuff up, put stuff down, and run a little bit. Just move your body. Level 2 is like eat well. Make sure you're putting like decent stuff into your body. Don't eat at McDonald's every day. Don't be a fiend. I love ice cream, but relax. Level 3 is like, are you taking care of your cardiovascular system? Doing hot, cold things, doing sauna, doing stuff like that. They can go like to sleep and just go down, and all these different things that you can do to improve your health and wellness and athleticism that are beyond just picking stuff up, putting stuff down, and moving your body.
They're all vital, all key to do these bloody flips, eh?
I agree. Well, just for life in general. But yeah, I do really like your approach, Brendan. It makes a lot of sense. Like the whole, you want to just give people the tools to do what they want to do, rather than trying to tell them like what they should be doing. It's like, here's what you can do, and here's like options for you. I think that's the right way to go, really.
Like giving people Lego pieces.
Yeah.
If you give them enough Lego pieces, then there's enough variation that everyone's going to make a completely different house.
Yes.
Wise
Words
words.
from a decent man, eh?
I just think about that one-armed person whenever I put something out, or the kid with diabetes, or the girl with a thyroid disorder. Like, it needs to be kosher for them too.
Yeah.
Not just the super athletes. If everybody was like you, I could treat you guys like I treat myself, like a team. But you guys are super athletes compared to at least the average American. I live in America. The average American ain't looking too hot these days.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. And on that note,
we're going to wrap it up.
Yeah. It's been lovely talking to you, and I hope we'll get to see you again soon. Had some great times at your parents' gym. I miss it. Miss hanging out.
We miss you, brother.
Yeah.
I miss you guys. I cannot wait for gatherings and to just be able to hug everyone and chill and just relax.
It'll come maybe next summer. Let's hope.
That's my hope too. That's my hope too. I think summer is when I'm going to start traveling around the U.S. at least.
Nice.
Yeah.
Anyway, been
Cool.
real. If you've been
Take
watching
care.
on the live, thank you for joining us. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, like the video, and let us know what you thought in the comments. Peace.